Hi, my name is Dr. Lisa Belanger at Conscious Works. So many of the conversations have been around this hybrid, virtual, and in-person office. One thing we need to dive deeper into is how does this impact leadership and how we lead? While many of us have been surviving for the past 18 plus months, I was able to speak to Shelly Speigel, who has been leading the first fully remote company in the US for the past 20 years. This company still operates 100% remote today. All operations and systems have been designed around this virtual workplace, and she explains why her 80 team members have never experienced Zoom fatigue and how to keep employees engaged when she hasn't met some of them, and how to hire and inspire in the digital world. Check out the conversation. This idea of remote work is nothing new to you. You said you've been doing this for over 20 years. What was it like at the beginning having a 100% remote team?
Right. Well, back in 2001, December 2001, when I founded Fire Engine Red, it was a very different environment. It was essentially 3 months after 9/11. Broadband was practically non-existent. So it was a very technologically, it was a very, very different environment. At the time, all the collaborative tools that people are so familiar with today, they merely did not exist. So we had a handful of tools, and it was always touch and go in terms of could we rely on the internet. So it was really very, very different back in 2001.
Why did you decide to do 100% remote?
Initially, the reason I decided is that when I founded the company, I didn't have any cash and I had to bootstrap the company. And I simply couldn't afford office space. So since I was serving a national clientele, or at least I hoped to, colleges and universities in the US, I really could have been anywhere. And I thought, why not save money and work from home?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think that's what really inspired people that were doing it before now without the pandemic being thrown on top of it, and then trying to figure out how we reimagine work. What if over these 20 years, what besides the technological issues at the beginning, what have been the greatest challenges with that 100% remote team?
In terms of challenges, since we were fully remote from day one, everything we did, all of our processes, everything we did were created for a remote environment. And again, like most startup companies that survive, the growth is rather slow. So as broadband came into existence, as there were more collaborative tools, we sort of grew into those. So I would say because we were fully remote from the beginning, everything we did was created for a fully remote environment.
Now it's fully remote. Are people close to you? Are your employees close to you? Or are they literally all over?
The company today has almost 80 team members. We are in 26 states and 4 countries. The people who are in those 26 states, many of them live within a drive of another team member. But right. For the most part, we are really scattered throughout the US and again various countries.
Since you never had that in-office environment, do you know everybody has legs? Have you ever met them? Is there an onboarding process that you've invested in that looks a little different? Or
I feel I know our team members really well. A few things. In the first several years, everything again we did was fully remote. We did have about 5 or 6 years that we had a team meeting, and we flew everyone. One year it was to Scottsdale, Arizona, various places. One year it was actually Philadelphia. So people have been with us for quite some time. So I probably know about 50% of the team, but no meaning I've met them in person
Right.
And again, because we have retention, people who were with us 10 years ago when we were having team meetings are currently with us. However, the 50% that I've never met in person, I feel that I know them very well. One way I've gotten to know people 6 weeks after they join Fire Engine Red, I schedule a one-on-one with them, and essentially we both take a walk wherever the team member is located. So what I like to do is go out for a walk, get them away from their work environment, and we just get to know one another. Then about 6 months later, I schedule another one-on-one. So I make a very conscious effort to get to know all of our team members at every level, including this summer we had 7 interns. I know them very well, part of the job.
Exactly. And you have to put more of a conscious effort, I think, when you're not running into them in the hall, to be able to have that time. But that means that it's more quality time and scheduled. And like you said, taking a walk is wonderful.
Very much so. And one of the things I make sure of is during these one-on-ones, I always schedule for an hour. I don't, it's not as though I do sort of a 15-minute, meet and greet.
Right.
It's really 1 hour, and it leaves time to talk about work and also personal lives. I'm always looking for good recommendations, what people, are watching on Netflix, for example. So it really ranges the gamut, during my one-on-ones with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that dedicated time so that there's actually space instead of trying to multitask, because we know that there's a little bit of that with some online meetings and some remote work. So I know we were talking before I started recording about what surprises people about having this 100% remote team that you guys have been doing since the beginning that might not be the same practices that other companies have adopted from switching from in-person to remote?
So there are 2 things. One actually has to do with the hiring process. We never use video during the hiring process. We have found that we have the best outcome when it's audio only. What happens is our team, the people who are interviewing a candidate, they really zero in on what they're saying. They're not distracted by background. We're not looking at people's home. We're not focused on their appearance. It's the day-to-day conversation that's very important. So we've had excellent outcomes with audio only. The reason that I know that video has not yielded as outcomes that are as positive is at one point, we had a new member of the leadership team. They thought we should just see what happens with video. And ironically, the person that we hired, their time at my company was the shortest ever. It was a total of 10 days. So it sort of proved the point. In addition to not using video to interview people, people are very, very surprised to find that no one at Fire Engine Red has Zoom fatigue because we rarely use video. What I mean by that is we don't use it internally when we communicate with other team members. Our team members, however, do use it when they are speaking with a client, someone externally. But internally, we're in constant communication. And what we have found is that, again, audio only, Zoom audio only works wonderfully for us. And again, we also use Slack as well, audio only. So people are shocked that my team, we didn't even know what Zoom fatigue was until the pandemic, and people started spending 5 hours a day online. We had never experienced this, and this is, over 20 years, we never have experienced it.
So, and I love this. I love this notion of audio only, because then you're not monitoring your own appearance, your mannerisms, your background,
Yes.
etc. And then hopefully you can, for those that were managing children being at home, where like these additional concerns at the beginning of the pandemic, were able to go on mute and come back off without much disruption.
Right.
And so one of the things that I hear constantly when I'm talking to leaders about hybrid, about remote work, is this almost hard time trusting employees. Well, what if they're multitasking? That's why we like video, so we know that they're there and they're present and we can see their eyes. What would you say to those leaders?
We are focused on results. We trust people completely. I mean, essentially, people have unlimited time for, doctor's appointments or running errands or going to a school event. We trust people completely, and then people get vacation. But basically, everything is unlimited. And then we give people essentially 4 to 5 weeks of vacation. We have found, whether it's our software team, what are they developing? Oh gosh, people who are managing or our sales team, we can see the results of those sales. So we're really focused on the results, not on how people are doing the work. An example would be if someone is out at a doctor's appointment, we don't ask people to make up the time. Again, we hire people that think like owners. They're extremely protective of the company. And my team would never do anything to jeopardize our success. So again, it works. In those rare instances where it doesn't, we have to let people go. But it's so rare.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. We're really good at finding people, hiring people who, as we say, they think like an owner of a company.
What I really like about this, we keep saying or giving lip service to, is success markers. It's not your time. It's, you're trying to drive towards these different success markers. But this seems to make leaders uncomfortable because there is a notion of success that comes from checking in 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, or value putting on overworking during the day, so longer hours, which also people use for hiring or for promoting purposes. Oh, they're a hard worker because they're here lots of hours. Are they, or are they just bad at their job? Right. And so being able to put that onus back on the employee, provide that trust, and then give those success markers as indicators.
Right. We have a very, very highly productive team. Quite honestly, at times where I find that people are working too many hours, that is a signal to me that they are understaffed. Mm-hmm. We, in fact, saw our data department grow very, very quickly in recent years. And I could see people's Slack lights, their green lights on at night, although mine wasn't. I was watching. And that actually, to me, was a signal we need to staff up. Right. So at my company, working more hours is not seen as a sign of success. It is usually due to growth, and we need to staff better. One of our values, it's work-life balance. It's always been. So alarm bells go off if I see that people are working too many hours.
Are there any leadership skills, or maybe even just a different mindset that's needed in this remote world versus in office?
I'd say yes. You need to have a sense of humor. I feel that as CEO, and because it's a remote environment, I also feel a responsibility to be, as I say, CEO also stands for Chief Entertainment Officer. I want to make certain that people feel connected to the company, not just to their department. So as a result, I feel as a leader of a fully remote company, you have to be that much more engaged with your team, and what I would say at all levels.
Can I ask how you do that before you go on to the next point? How do you chief entertain?
Oh, so many ways. So many ways. Well, one thing that we do on Wednesdays, we have a walking Wednesday where we have a topic and people will let me know beforehand if they have something that they would like to say, participate. We have a topic, for example, your first car. Tell us stories about your first car. Well, that leads to lots of fun conversation, your first job. So I try to pick topics where it brings out more, or say, people get to know one another in different ways. So walking Wednesdays are fun. We have a talent show every summer. We've also done where we visit essentially people in their homes and they introduce us, in this case via Zoom, to their children and their pets.
Yeah.
So I also try to post things throughout the day. Sometimes someone sends me an email that's just totally inappropriate, and I love to overshare. Well, many, many years ago, at a team meeting, I wanted to introduce to our team the name of our CRM product. So it was really an unveiling of the name. So what I did, again, this was in person at a team meeting, and people are still talking about it 10 years later, is I dressed up as Katy Perry and I came out and let people know that our software was inspired by Katy Perry and the name is going to be Fireworks.
Perfect.
So I came out to her music, etc. So yes, I will dress up. I will share things, try to keep everyone entertained through the day, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, I cut you off because I wanted examples. What other things and what other skill sets do you think are required?
Again, really getting to know people and really feeling comfortable in that role. You need to over communicate. We have every other Friday an all team meeting. What I like to do sometimes is say things about the same thing about 3 different ways, just to make sure that people are catching everything. So you have to be a good communicator. You have to communicate frequently. Don't be afraid to repeat yourself. So I'd say just communicating all the time. I think if you ask my almost 80 team members, if they feel that I know them well, I think they would say yes. So you've got to really make an effort.
You said every other week you have an all team meeting. Do you have like weekly email communication? Is it by Slack? Like, how are you keeping connected and at what frequency?
Yeah, we have a channel that is sort of like the water cooler, like many virtual companies do. So when people post things, I'll participate very frequently. I always have my Slack status up to date. Also, I have my own Slack channel that we automatically subscribe everyone to, and it's called CEO Fangirl. So on my Fangirl channel, what I try to do is post something about whether it's a sale, whether someone had a great client communication, whether someone did a fabulous redesign of our website, you name it. My managers know that one of the things that makes me happy is when people provide me with good content for my Fangirl channel.
Yeah.
And so I'm always posting things in that way. Again, that's another way that I keep the team engaged.
Yeah, and then be able to express gratitude and be able to show off this amazing team that you have. Do you have office hours, or do you have like how do you remain open to communication? Certainly Slack is one of them. Or is there any other way?
Everyone has regular work hours.
Right.
Because we're on different time zones, they all vary. We have someone actually works for us in Alaska, and she likes to work East Coast hours. I don't get it, but that's what she prefers. So everyone knows what people's work hours are, but we're flexible. So for example, if our team member in Alaska decides that she'd like to work, say, West Coast hours, of course, we're happy to do it. For the most part, people have standard work hours. Then let's just say they need to run out and they're running a carpool at their child's school or whatever. They change their Slack status. Lets people know, like running errands or at a school play back at whatever time. So within their work day, they have flexibility. Right. But everyone has work hours. The work hours are actually posted on their Slack profile.
Is there any constraints to that? So for example, is there an expectation that you don't communicate outside of certain hours, or like any delay send recommendations from an email perspective or Slack, or is communication open?
Well, I try to set an example. I will rarely Slack someone after hours or email them if it's about work.
Right.
If it's something about, I just watched this great show on Netflix. Have you seen it yet? So for example, I just recommended, she's actually on a staycation, and I said, you should really check out the other two. It's a great comedy. So I try to make certain that if I'm communicating with people outside of work hours, it's personal.
Right.
In addition, when I go to lunch or if I'm home for lunch, I post on Slack lunch because I want people to take lunch.
Yeah.
Again, especially running a fully remote company, people see your status. I try to model behavior that I want my team to engage in. So people are not rewarded for working more hours. I am happy when they take lunch. So all of these things, you have to be a good communicator on many different levels.
So I asked the greatest challenge with this remote team. What's the best thing about having a remote team?
The best thing has always been that we can hire incredible people.
Right.
The talent pool is so deep. So that has been wonderful. The thing that can be disappointing is I really like the people I work with. Many of us, oh my gosh, so many people have been here 10 or more years. And I wish we lived closer so we could see each other more.
Yes.
But I would say from a logistical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, because we were always fully remote, everything has been built around it.
Right.
And it works really well for us.
Right.
And again, everyone's on the same playing field because everyone's fully remote.
And that getting hired into it, right? Where what's so different for so many companies is they're hired to go to a certain office with certain expectations. Right. So not only is leadership trying to adjust to a remote or a hybrid workforce, so are employees versus, and there's some that desperately want to come back to the office. I say this lovingly, but I have 2 small kids, and yes, a silent work area, especially mid-pandemic, would have been very nice. So, you have this expectation getting into it that that's the role you're being hired into. But you make such a good point about being able to expand your recruitment strategy to the best people within, like you said, even several countries,
right?
Let alone.
Right. That was initially when we started, we couldn't afford an office. But then the reason we stayed remote is it just gave us the ability to hire people no matter where they lived. It's worked out well. So now, of course, we have more competition since there are more companies that are offering remote. But one thing I think that's pretty special about the companies who were fully remote pre-pandemic is that fully remote was in their DNA. So we do it with much more ease. And it's something that was deliberate. From the founders, leadership team. So we just do it much more naturally. I'm so happy that my company during the pandemic has managed to avoid these difficult discussions that companies are having right now as to their work structure. I'm really happy that we were able to avoid it. I never realized how lucky I was that we were fully remote from day one
You
until
didn't anticipate a full global pandemic disrupting work as such. So
never. As my CFO said, Shelly, you were such a genius, 20 years ahead of the time. You knew this. And of course, I didn't know it, but I'm really happy that we didn't need to change anything during the pandemic. We were already set up to have that workplace flexibility.
do you do any all team meetings in person anymore, or is there any part of the company you do get together?
We fully intend to resume those. The reason we stopped is that we are one of the rare companies that is building an enterprise software system and essentially bootstrapping it without private equity investment, etc. So for the past 8 years, 7 years maybe, all of our money has gone towards, we've invested in our company, but we are very hopeful that within the next 3 years, we can get back to those team meetings. When we used to travel, because like many people, as a result of the pandemic, we are not traveling as much on sales or conferences, at least not yet. But my leadership team and I always have made a point, as we have traveled visiting colleges and universities, whoever is in the area, we always get together with that group of people. So we have managed, those of us who do traveling, we've gotten to know even more people and see them in person.
And I love that, because from my experience, when I've done things like that too, then they recommend the restaurant, and it's always fantastic, right? And you get a bit of a local perspective on these places that you're traveling to.
You know what? You're exactly right. It's great. So we get to experience places in a whole different way. Also, when people come through Philadelphia, again, people haven't done so in the past year and a half, but prior to that, I make sure that everyone knows, let me know, I'd love to meet you. And oftentimes it's your whole family.
Yeah.
So it does work. And people even when people now vacation, if somebody's in the area, they'll make a point of getting together with them. My company always picks up the tab.
Oh, there you go. So I'll be there soon. Okay.
Yeah,
is there anything else that you want to comment on in regards to remote work, what's been going on in the last couple of years, the future of work, and anything specific to leadership or leadership skills?
One thing I would say is that running a fully remote company, I believe, is much easier than hybrid. There's so many issues that we don't need to deal with. I feel it's going to be very interesting the next 2 years to see how people navigate that. The impact, for example, on certain employees who choose to work from home. Are managers able to create an even playing field when it comes to compensation, when it comes to promotions, etc.? So I'll be interested in watching. I think we're going to see more people going back to offices than we think.